Welcome to the Funnel Reboot Podcast, brought to you by Marketing What's New. Let's get into today's show.
Hey, Glenn here. Welcome to Funnel Reboot. Today, we learn why privacy is actually a good thing for marketing. First, I want to remind you the deadline for sunsetting of the old Google Analytics is quickly approaching. So we're not caught off guard. In June of 2023, we need to transition our websites to Google Analytics 4. And I've got some special information on exactly how you can push forward fast on GA4 coming later in the show, and it's also in the show notes. To today's show. Contrary to popular opinion among marketers, we don't have the right to retain all of our visitors' information just because the internet makes it possible. Complying with data privacy laws can be confusing and stressful, but it is possible to work with data in a way that goes beyond compliance and actually builds trust with customers. Our guest is a privacy consultant. She founded Red Clover Advisors in 2017, and through it, she assists companies to create privacy programs and to achieve compliance. She also serves as a Fractional Chief Privacy Officer. Through frequent speaking appearances and her own podcast, she shares practical tips so companies can carry on marketing, but in a way that's compliant and even preferred. She holds both a BBA and an MBA from Emory University and lives with her family in Atlanta. Let's go hear from Jodi Daniels. I'm so glad to welcome Jodi Daniels. Welcome to the show, Jodi.
Hi, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
And you're going to help untangle something that is really concerning. It's concerning all around. It's the issue of privacy. And yet, I know that our listeners who are marketers in the trenches and analysts who help to report on marketing, they're quite worried because when they hear the word privacy, what primarily comes to mind for them is the fact that a whole lot of data that they have been able to get access to seems to be going away. And the glass seems kind of empty. Can you tell me if the glass is half empty or half full from a privacy standpoint?
Well, I'm a really optimistic person, so I'm going to have to go with the half full variety. But in all seriousness, I really do believe the idea is we're at a place now where we can differentiate ourselves because there's plenty of people out there who are going to still try and come up with shortcuts and workarounds or who don't want to believe and buy into the privacy thing. At some point, it's going to be table stakes, and that's just the way it's going to be. But there's still some time to make that be a differentiator. And ultimately, which I know we're going to dive into, I really believe this is all about building trust with customers. Marketers are spending their time, their effort, their dollars trying to convince people to buy a solution or a thing to solve a problem, solve a need, or just because it's awesome. And in doing so, they're trying to convince me or anyone to buy that for all the long list of features. Well, one of those pieces is around data and privacy and trust. It's just one more layer that really was always there. It just was at the bottom, and now it's risen to the top.
Very well put. And this, I suppose, is most acutely felt in North America, where for those of us who have not looked to other jurisdictions, we tend to have a lot of, there are no fetters on how we can collect information. There's very few limits in, places outside of, let's say, California right now that make you responsible for the data you collect and to be able to give the person who you got it from an indication of what you're doing with it and whether or not you should forget it. Can you tell us, if you cast your glance around other places, what regulations are people in those places having to work under when it comes to privacy?
Sure. The majority of people started even hearing about privacy because of GDPR, which is in the EU. And it is still considered the gold standard. It celebrated its 4th birthday of being effective. We're still in toddlerville here. It'll, go off to school next year, potentially.
Right.
And like I said, it's the gold standard, meaning many other, I'm going to call them modern privacy laws, are following and mirroring GDPR. They're using that as the base. And certain countries are tweaking it in a little bit more severity than others, and some are making it weaker than others around the world. Many companies still need to deal with GDPR. They have a large footprint in Europe, and there's that one to contend with. For anyone listening who's in the US, well, you mentioned California. What's also happening is in 2023, we're going to have 5 state privacy laws. California and Virginia join the party in January, Colorado and Connecticut in July, and Utah at the end of 2023. They are similar and not similar all at the same time.
Okay.
They all have a little bit of some nuances, and many of them borrow from some of the language and concepts from GDPR. Where it stops is, for the most part, in a very generalized form. The EU, and honestly most of the world, is an opt-in philosophy, especially for marketing. The United States and its laws are still an opt-out philosophy. There are some exceptions, sensitive data being one of them. So anyone who's in certain fields who actually processes what's considered sensitive data under the specific definitions, of course, under those laws, they are a little bit different. But for the majority, like, you just want to get Jodi's email.
Right.
Or, to be able to follow me using the cookies that are still here today. It is opt-in in the EU and opt-out in the United States. And those are fundamental differences that, for marketers who really like to track people and email a variety of them, is good news so far for them in the United States.
Yeah. So you've brought in a great point about the different levels. And I just want to pause on it for a quick second. You've identified that there are cookies. So this is actually just at the standpoint where somebody's on a website and they are going around on the website and then, let's say, being retargeted by ads to come back to the website. That was only possible because there were obviously cookies that were dealing with them, but we still don't know who they are. And yet this still can have implications if they're in one of those jurisdictions and there's privacy, because they did not have a choice about doing that. Let's flip for a quick second to the identified visitor. So the way I can best think of how we have an opt-out world is if I'm on a website and it's asking for my email and it's offering me, let's say, a PDF download. And the language is something like, give us your email to sign up for our newsletter, and in exchange, we'll give you this download. Right? And it sounds very innocuous, but hold on. If I unpack that, I've now promised them an ongoing access to my inbox for a one-time download. And I didn't get the opportunity or checkbox to say whether I did or didn't want that. I actually looked for the download, right? So we have a couple of different scenarios in which this matter of opt-in or opt-out is presenting itself.
That's absolutely true. Especially in the business world, and even actually I'd say in the consumer world, because some sites will say, give me your email and I'll give you 10% off. Well, the reason they're doing that is so that now they can send me their sales 4 times a day. Eventually, I'm going to buy something maybe, or I'm just going to hit unsubscribe because I'm so annoyed. And in the B2B world, it tends to be the PDF download. So sort of kind of the same concept of give me your email, I give you something in return.
Yes.
And that still is here. Where we're moving is not just give me the email, but help me understand who you are better so that I can actually create a relationship with you. And before, I think you had people grabbing emails from anywhere, sharing emails amongst companies, amongst co-ops, buying lists. And that world is really changing. The idea that I'm going to offer you something to try and convince you to give me your information is still here. And if I choose to opt in to give it to you, well, if you want to keep me, then now it comes down to the content. You're going to have to give me some really great content. Now, the privacy laws that layer on top of that, you need to have a privacy notice that says, hey, thanks for giving me your email. I'm going to send you these kinds of messages. And also the idea of individual rights. We've always had the ability to opt out. Now I have the ability to ask to be deleted.
Right.
Perhaps I don't want you to have my email anymore, and I want more than just stop sending them to me. I literally want you to delete me. And as marketers, there's very little exception to have to follow that. In the business world, some of the individual rights, right to delete, there might be a few exceptions that maybe the core business might be able to follow. But in the marketing world, there's pretty much none because we don't actually have to keep your email.
If we take it further into a person's involvement with a company, I'm hearing that individual right gets trampled on when a company, for example, just puts in their terms of service, we're going to hold on to your phone number and send you texts. That's just how you do business with us. And it's one size fits all. Everybody is treated with that kind of company first. We decided that we needed your contact information and we decided how we're going to use it. What you're describing as more of an individual preference thing, now the companies have to rethink how they've engineered all this.
They do have to think about it. And if we go backwards, they have to understand the data that they have. I call it know your data. The basics of any privacy program, we can talk technicalities. You need a policy. There's individual rights, opt-in. Well, it's all about knowing your data. You collect what kinds of things from what types of people and put them in what types of places. Those places could be an email service provider, a CRM. But let's not forget the Google Sheets that you shared with an agency or downloaded, or the event software that you have and now you're downloading and you're sharing, the contractors that you're working with, the 400 other places that information could go, even the laptop. So you need to know where it all is. You need to know the kinds of fields that you have. You have to think in advance of, do I need that information? What am I going to do with that information? And inform me. Going forward, if you think about, I'm going to launch a new campaign. When you create that new landing page, what kinds of information are you collecting? Do you have a privacy notice? That is one of the biggest things. Landing pages always seem to get the privacy notice to not join it in its footer because they're often standalone pages, not a part of the main website, and it all gets forgotten. So we certainly want to make sure that we're thinking about what law, where are the people? Because the law is applicable where the people are, not you, the business. So where are your people for whatever you're doing? What do they expect? What's consistent with what you've done before? Are you using a new tool? Who is this new tool? Are they complying with XYZ law? Who else is going to be a part of this party? Are there going to be new players? You want to make sure that everyone is a part to the privacy conversation. And the more you think about it in advance, it will be no different than every other ask that you have, like how much does something cost? What technology do you need? Who's going to help do that? Privacy is just the new player on the block. It will soon be just like all the others. And you would never start a project with zero budget. You would never start a project with not an idea of how long it would take or what tools you need.
Right.
Privacy, again, is just going to be one of those things that's new. We're all getting used to it. And it's changing very quickly. But it's needs to just be kind of ingrained in the everyday conversation that we're having.
Yeah, it's an asset. It's got a life cycle. All we think of right now is that we get it and we seem to keep it forever and that there's no undo. As you say, when we take a copy of it into a Google Sheet and we share it with somebody else, we never think of, okay, well, where are they taking it? there was a little while back this week with John Oliver where he did a terrifying expose of data brokers. And, I suppose that shows the most extreme version of how data, particularly when several different sources are being tied together, and then data science is used to extract some general ideas about who these people are when they're, taking those separate data sources. This is what can happen when we run afoul of people who want to use it that way. But if we just dial it back to simpler things, like you say, we just think of it as something that is there, just like setting up the customer service for a service, setting up the website where it's hosted. It's just one of those other items on the list.
Exactly. That is literally where it is. Now, at the same time, especially for marketers, as they're thinking about a campaign, what is their end goal? Their end goal is to bring in new customers, to make new sales, to bring in prospects, to strengthen a brand. Well, privacy is one of those pieces that can help it. It can help connect to people because you're using data respectfully. Sometimes when people receive something in the mail and who is this company? I never gave them my address. Where'd they get this information from? Sometimes it's effective if it's a really special product, but how many people throw away what would be called quote unquote junk mail? The same is true in email. When you get something and you don't expect it, it doesn't always work. And instead it actually has the reverse effect. Yeah. And literally remember working with a company, and it was two different brands. And brand A wanted to email the customers of brand B. Now they were affiliated, but brand B was its own and brand A was its own. And I said, well, even if technically I said it was okay, let's just pretend we worked through all the legalities and we figured out it was okay. When brand B gets this email, what are they going to think? Who is this from? Why are they getting it? And I said, well, so what's the open rate? Oh, they're terrible. Like they're not good campaigns. And I said, so let me get this straight. You want to send a message to a bunch of people who don't expect it from a brand that they're not expecting to have. You think that they're going to open it and then execute on whatever you want. And that's going to be a good thing. Surely you have something else that you can sell because it was a company trying to sell this opportunity to an advertiser.
Yeah.
They did not go through with it. I said, out of all the products, surely there's one that's going to be a better ROI for the customer, the actual advertiser, right? The company, because that would be a terrible brand experience for the customer. Yeah. And that is where marketing and privacy connect. It's not just about, can I send it? It's what does the customer expect is going to happen when they receive the message from you, when they engage on your website.
Yeah, I think we all get that. It's maybe not something we can bake down into a formula, but we all intuit that this trust and relationship that we have, that has some value, and that we're trashing that value if we do something like this company did. Jodi, we're going to take a quick break and come back and talk about security, which is a little bit different from privacy, but we're going to take a quick break first. I'm taking a moment to tell you about an upcoming workshop that tackles the Google transition that we're all facing. We now have less than 9 months before the current Universal Analytics goes away. The sooner it's installed, the more data you'll have in Google Analytics 4. But whether you have installed GA4 or are still on Universal Analytics, you must still handle how to show trends over time, as GA4 counts activity differently from the old platform. And you'll have to produce reports because GA4 is missing many that were in the old version. When it comes to the new Google Analytics, Google is leaving a lot more up to you than just running a simple setup wizard. Now, I want to be clear, there are many GA4 migration paths out there. And since you're going through a full-blown migration, you should consider the alternative of working with industry standard components that you can do your GA4 analysis and reporting on, as well as use it with the data that's in all of your systems. And Google is including with GA4 functionality for accessing the raw web data analytics that are behind the interface. you can seize this chance to consolidate that data with your other systems. Yes, you'll have to learn some new things, but you don't have to feel overwhelmed by this. It's not daunting when you're using tools on data that you already are familiar with an expert in the room personally guiding you. And that's how my GA Fast Forward program works. After 2 days, people will leave with reports that show your stakeholders funnel data that's tied to business performance. Now, the next workshop is going to be in Ottawa this December, and all the info, including how to get $200 off by booking early, can be found at gafastforward.com. That's GA as in Google Analytics, and the words fast forward. You can spell it all out or put the numeral 4 as in GA4 followed by word. gafastforward.com. Thanks for listening. Let's get back to the conversation. Doing things in the name of privacy, when we peel behind it, it seems like it's more to do with security. And I'm just wondering if you can tell me, a little bit about that. But the first two companies that I'm thinking about that seem to walk a very fuzzy line here are Apple and Google. So, they both have initiatives where they're saying that they really care about what the end user wants. And yet both of them are happy to give advertisers the opportunity to get in front of those people. But there's a whole lot of different, thorniness in the middle there. And both of those giants just say, oh, well, that's in the name of privacy that we do all that. What's your take?
Well, first, I think it's important to make sure, just to level set, the difference of privacy and security. It might be obvious, but the privacy side is all about the collection, use, and sharing of data. The security side is protecting it from people who shouldn't have access to it. We all do want to have really strong security. Both of those platforms, so if you think about Apple, it's hardware, it's the operating system that is running everything that's on my phone. Google, from a Google Play, an Android perspective, you're going to have the similar situation. In a Google universe, there's oodles of actual Google software, right? There's YouTube, there's Gmail, there's Drive, there's all these products that they have. So from a security perspective, those are really important features. Now, when you think about the privacy side, who can and can't have access to that data, Apple decided to try and pull the reins in and made it an opt-in universe. If you recall just a little bit ago, we talked about the difference from a regulation perspective, EU versus US, opt-in versus opt-out. Well, Apple has gone ahead and said, well, from a technology perspective, we're going to make that choice, and we're going with an opt-in approach. So anyone playing in that universe has experienced a significant drop in the data that is available to them. Google has said that they're going to join in that regard, but not yet. And they kind of keep pushing that out. And their tools are changing to, one, meet regulatory requirements around the world, and two, to kind of join this privacy movement that is happening. But the systems are different. Apple is a hardware company with a little bit of software, and the majority of its business model is from hardware. Now, one could argue, well, it has a massive ecosystem of people, and it's trying to figure out what it will do with that. It will still be an opt-in situation in that universe. Google, however, has an entire ecosystem where it had always had one universal connector across all of its products. If I was on Gmail and I stayed logged into Gmail and there was a tracker that followed me, it's very similar to some of the social media platforms. Now, when you take Google, you have Gmail, you have Drive, you have all the different actual docs, YouTube, actual search. That's a lot of information compared to what a hardware company is having. At the same time, they all believe in choice. They're kind of forced into this. You have an antitrust meets a privacy issue in between them. You have parts of the world who say that Google Analytics isn't even capable of complying with GDPR. So there's this massive tension. And then you have millions of businesses from tiny to large who are all relying on some of these products. I absolutely do not have the crystal ball as to where this is going to go.
Right.
I just spoke last week with a good agency friend of mine who's connected with some of those Google teams, and we were talking back and forth, what would you want to know? I'm like, well, the obvious. How are they fixing Google Analytics? How are they fixing all these things? And what's the time frame going to be like? So all marketers genuinely have pretty much the same questions. I can assure you that this is the world we're staying in. This is the new universe. We all just need to get warm and fuzzy with it.
Yeah.
And the way that we're going to connect with our customers and our prospects in a digital world, it's changing. I think it still can change for the better. And to kind of just tie it all together, we talked about privacy versus security, Apple versus Google. The security piece is incredibly important.
Sure.
Cybersecurity is one of the biggest risks that are out there. There are people around the world who just find this fun to hack into people, whether they're small to big. So we do want all of these companies very focused on the security aspects of it. And then how it's tied to how you can use the data is also really important. And as we start to move into Internet of Things and other types of technologies, part of the security is making it encrypted or not available, which actually helps from a privacy standpoint because you wouldn't want that type of information to get out there. And I just wanted to be able to tie together those two pieces.
I'm really glad you did. And just for context, so we're recording this mid-2022, and how I and my peers feel it on a day-to-day basis, like the friend you were talking with, is that the Google products specifically that collect the information and that allow advertising with that information have both been completely revamped. So Google Analytics 4 is here, and Google Analytics 3 is going away June 30th of next year. That's not coincidental with these changes in the regulations. And their Google Ads, they have now a superset type of campaign that is providing far less data to the advertiser and is using that Google account, that persistent login that you described, as one of the main ways for them to model and then put that information in front of a buyer. And they wrap all of that around this saying that says, just trust us. And, to some degree, for any company that has a website, there's a certain amount of that you can't do anything about and that you do have to trust. But one of the places where, for example, what you've been talking about makes it clear that you should think before you trust, or that you should check with your buyer before you trust, are things like when I get a new customer and I've collected their name and email address, can I automatically upload that to one of these ad platforms so that it can do specific targeting to include or exclude those customers? And we all need to go back and re-examine if that's what we want to do, and if we've, in our policies, said to people that's what we're going to do. Because if we haven't done those things, then we're in violation of what you've said, especially for the customers that are in the jurisdictions where that's a no-no.
Yeah, I mean, all of these things focus and cast a light on the core, which is, what does the customer expect? What did they learn about? What were they told was going to happen? And what are their individual rights? As they are followed around the internet with some type of unique ID, well, that's what we've all been accustomed to. The idea going forward is maybe that's not how it's supposed to be, unless I'm aware of it, I've opted into it, and I can decide, nope, don't do that to me anymore. Let me still use the products without following me. Those are really what the kind of modern privacy era is focusing on. It's really about notice and choice. To me, those are the absolute basic principles. It gets really messy. It gets really complex. But when you sort of boil it all down to that, those two features.
And marketers, I think, we're well poised for that because we understand the utility of helping our customers and making that relationship better. And to me, how that should work in in this question of how much data do we have, we could simply say, am I using this data to help make the relationship better or not? And if it's just laying around there, why do I need it? I mean, it gives me a bigger attack surface for one of these people who hack the internet to just come along and take. So I want to get rid of anything that could make me more vulnerable, right? So if I collect less data, that kind of helps that. But at least if I use the data that I have, the first party data that my customers entrusted me with, there could be upside too. That glass can be half full because I can say, hey, I know you. Out of all the things that we offer, here's probably something that you at your current stage could use. Was that helpful? They'll say, thank you very much, hopefully.
So I'd like to add on that. I think when you have the first party data, you can ask, what are you interested in? I now don't have to guess. I can actually ask them. And not everyone always knows what it is that they want. Sometimes they have to be pushed. Yep. But you can start to blend both of those things together. If I can see that you're clicking on this type of information, well, then I might assume, but maybe you're buying it for gift. I don't know. Instead, if I can ask, if I can push information to you and see how you engage, I'm going to have a much stronger relationship. And actually, your resources are going to go further because I haven't just guessed. We've had a back and forth conversation. I tell this story all the time, but there's particular brands who I can't tailor. They just keep sending me the nursery stuff all the way to the adult things. And I don't need the nursery things anymore. And I can't stop it. It drives me insane.
Yeah. And that's such a simple, we can all relate to that, right? But if we step outside of our own marketing engines for a minute and we look at it as a customer, I'm sure we'll see just as embarrassing instances in what we do. And that's exactly where we need to start changing how we do it. We are expected to know this stuff as marketers. And Jodi, I know you make a quiz for people so that they can, hopefully check and see how much they're getting this and where they can improve. Can you tell us about that?
I do. I have a really fun short quiz. It is at the top of my website. Just go to redcloveradvisors.com. At the very top, you cannot miss the button that says how data compliant is your business. And at the end, I do ask if you are interested in learning more, you can share an email and you will get a report that will outline, here are all the key steps and areas that we identify for a privacy program. And it's going to kind of give you a sense of where you are. Are you at the beginning? Are you a really awesome, your privacy program is off to the running? But even if that is the case, everywhere along the way, there's always room for opportunity. And so in that report, you will find what our key next steps would be based on where you are in your journey. So it's a super easy quiz. It should take you like 30 seconds to complete. And it's fun. We have actually fun answers.
Great. And you're following all the best practices. We will include a link in that to the show notes as well as contact info for you. Jodi, thank you so much for coming on today.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
I was really glad to. And to the person listening, I'm sure that you got better insight into how privacy can be part of your funnel. And my hope is that you can use it to make your funnel even better.
Thanks for listening. Follow the show on Twitter @Funnel Reboot. If you like what you have heard today, please consider leaving a review wherever you get your podcasts.